Hello, it's Erin again, Hanky Pasunky. So I'm working on this wyvern egg. It was pointed out to me by a 13-year-old that I was mispronouncing the word, and it is wyvern, not wyvern or wyvern, but definitely wyvern. So that's what we're working on today. So we've done a fair amount of work. So last time I think that we videoed, I was etching. Yes, I was etching with acid with vinegar. So I did probably about 6 to 7 hours of acid etching just in vinegar, and got it really deep on the poles, but it was still a little, it wasn't quite as deep as I wanted along the belly or the body of the egg, around the equator line, sort of. So I did a bunch more work with like physical carving, which I don't usually do. I don't usually carve. Egg dust is rough. I have asthma to begin with, so what I don't want to do is add additional nasty stuff into my lungs, but did a little bit of that just to get some deeper lines in here. And if you're wondering how, so what I did was first I soaked it in vinegar to get the shell nice and soft. And then I worked with some diamond drill bits. So I got this set, which fits in a Dremel tool. I have a Dremel tool. There's a, I don't know what all the names are, but the rounded head is really good for carving. So I used that a couple of times to get started, sort of just to punch through a little bit to get in a little bit of deeper. But then mostly, and I did that outdoors because again, I don't want dust flying. I also kept the shell wet with vinegar the whole time and worked scrubbing away. So I've got 2 jars here and 2 toothbrushes. So one's water, one's vinegar. So I use the vinegar to keep going and the water every once in a while just to rinse, mostly to rinse like the drill heads and rinse off the accumulated gunk of eggshell goo. And it's had a few days to dry, and there's just some little crusty deposits that sometimes things will bubble through. I scrubbed it with baking soda once I was done to stop the etching process, but there's still, I don't know if you can even see, but there's just some little crusty bits. So I'm just taking those off with water at this point because I have gotten as deep as I want to get. So what I also did when I didn't want to be using the drill and have dust flying all over the place is I used some of the diamond head drills, a thicker one and a thinner one, and just kind of just got in there and just scrubbed away at it and agitated a bunch of shell off. I don't necessarily recommend it. It's very time consuming. I didn't video any of that because this is very loud. This is kind of loud. The scrapey is loud and obnoxious. And honestly, I was listening to an audiobook, so nobody needs. Sometimes I like to listen to audiobooks while I work, honestly. So now I think it is about time to put some color on. So we're going to put some of the background color on. I've got some nice deep etches here. The wax is still on the scales. So the color work that I did on the outside of the shell is still protected. It's still there. It's not going anywhere. It is covered in wax. And then this is all etched down. And so I usually, again, I don't usually carve, and this gave a pretty, it gave a pretty rough, sort of almost jagged feel, which is great for this. This is perfect for a wyvern egg. It wouldn't be perfect for a pasanka because in that case I want nice, clean, smooth lines, in which case your acid etching gives you nice, clean, smooth lines, nice, crisp, very crisp edges. These are going to be a little less crisp. There will be crispness. There will be very distinct crisp cut lines. And then there will also be some deeper, sort of jagged, slightly more organic feeling. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead gonna put on a glove just to protect my holding hand because I'm going to use a whole bunch of dyes, and I'm going to take away my Lazy Susan. And I'm going to bring out just a, I don't know, just a piece of plastic thing to hold, to catch any dye drips. So again, I've got some vinegar, I've got some water. I'm going to start by giving it, by just brushing everything down with vinegar. Let's take that out of the way. So what this will allow for is, if you ever work with watercolor, if you want soft blending, this is basically the vinegar will act as a blending medium. Water will also work just fine. The vinegar will really soak it into the shell a little bit deeper. I just need to be careful not to leave it on too long because obviously I don't want to etch it a whole lot more. It's pretty deep. I did etch down into the white all the way around. The hole is open right now because it was drying out. The etching, you know, having it submerged in vinegar for hours and hours and hours. Obviously some of the moisture gets through. Also not shown, I emptied out the sand and the BBs that I used to weight the floaty egg down in the vinegar. Not a necessary step. That's just something that I do because I find that a little bit easier. Right. And then I'm going to do some color gradients. So I'm going to start with some Tofino Sunset, which is about the lightest color that I want. I'll start with that up at the North Pole, and it's just sort of going all over the place, and that's great. I love how gravity is actually helping me here. And you can also see the color difference of the way that the color is a little bit different in the areas that were still a little blue, that still had a little bit of the blue-green emu egg color variation goodness, which is why it is very challenging to put light colors on an emu eggshell, because you need to take into effect how it's going to react against whatever greenish blue you've got going on there already. Ooh, that is so pretty. And I maybe didn't even need to wet it down with vinegar ahead of time, since I'm getting a pretty good base in here. Now you could also certainly work, it could be less messy, and you could work in smaller sections at a time. Absolutely. That is so pretty. And it'll be darker in some places and a little bit lighter in other places. I'll give it some more right there. Cool, cool, cool. If you're wondering how old my dyes are and how long I keep using them for, this I mixed up in September of 2019. It is currently June of 2021. Still great. Ain't got no crud. Still works great. Some last longer than others. And actually I might get a more vibrant color if I were using fresher dye. This is, now we're working with some Monarch Orange, which is a very, very vibrant orangey red, well, reddish orange. It's orange. It's very similar to the Pro Chem Cantaloupe, which I like a lot also. And I'm going for a slightly ombre effect, obviously, so lighter at the North Pole, darker at the South Pole, or at the big fat end where the hole is. And I recommend, obviously, when you're going to store things like this or display them, that you put the hole at the bottom where everybody won't stare at it, unless you really like the idea of having the hole visible to show that it's a real egg, which some people do. Sometimes with these bigger eggs, you can fill them with great stuff expanding foam if the hole is large enough to get that little straw doohickey in there. It's an option. And I usually save that for people who are going to be using it for cosplay, who are going to be carrying them around, and therefore want to be sure that if it drops on, you know, like a hard cement floor in a convention center, that it's still going to crack. It's not going to not crack, but it won't fall apart. It'll hold together. And hey, a crack in a wyvern egg or a crack in a dragon egg, that just means it started to hatch, right? Got some blue showing through, get a little more color in there. And I might do a few more rounds of color application as we go. I've got dye on the outside now of my jar lids. That's awesome. So now I'm going to forever be getting dye on my hands as I open and close these. And that's fine. If anyone needs an entertaining meme, if you're familiar with the everything's fine or it's fine dog, which is like the little cartoon dog saying it's fine while the room around him is literally on fire, there is a animated gif of like Kurt Russell from Backdraft carrying that poor little dog out of the room on fire, which is sort of awesome. Moving on to glowing hearts. Oh, there's some stuff in my dye. I should probably mix up a fresh batch of this. Let's see what's going on there. Some gloppiness, yeah. I will be definitely mixing up a fresh batch of this because that's gross. Ew. But in the meantime, I bet there's still good color. Just need to make sure not to get the texture on. Oh yeah, that is good color. And when you're just using, this is oops, the painting on technique is actually really, really useful for larger eggs. And what you can do is then just hold the egg over your jar of dye so that the drips go right back in. If you're just doing one color at a time, if you're not mixing like this. It just saves the trouble of moving dyes back and forth out of, you know, pint-sized mason jars into quart-sized mason jars or gallon bags or however you decide to go about it. So that orange is actually dyeing really light. I might end up, because I want some areas that are light and bright, but overall I want it to be pretty red. So let's toss it in and just let it drip a little bit in places. We'll just see how it dries. Put that aside. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to go Sacred Amaranth or straight to the Okanagan wine. I used the Okanagan wine as a main color on the outer parts of the scale, so we'll definitely be tying that back in. Over here. The amaranth, let's see, that would give me a, oh yeah, that actually is really nice. So this will be a much more intense red, a purpley red, very purpley red. I'm not using the Kalina red on this. I love the Kalina red. Kalina red. Canadians can please correct me if I'm mispronouncing that. Which is an amazing red. I think of it as a very Christmassy red. It's really deep. It's very rich. It takes really well, and it does not play well with others. It's a red that you don't want to try to coat. You don't want to try to put another color on top of it. I'm not sure it would mix super well with other colors, honestly, because of that tendency. You know, they're not playing well with others situation. Okay, and then a little wine here. Some deeper colors in random places. I've got some fieriness, and I will probably come back in with all of the dyes after I mix up some fresh glowing hearts, because I definitely need some fresh glowing hearts. And given how old all of these are, I might also remix some of the oranges to give them a little more intensity. Bloody. Bloody. Fiery and bloody are really close to the same colors, it turns out. So that's what I've been working with today. Gonna go let it dry, do a little bit of cleanup, see how the colors look, and possibly, almost certainly, do some more dye in here to get these colors nice and dark. But there is, I like how there's some variation, there's some modeling, there's, you know, peek throughs of the really intense fiery orange along with some of the deeper reds. Yes. We'll be back.